Hello, hello everyone. How are you? Welcome in, clever Ruo. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up to Weddy trying to sniff. I don't know what he's trying to sniff, but he's trying to sniff something. And clever, yes, back gobble, back goblin. Don't sniff me. Hello, D. Welcome in, D, as well. Welcome in, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. It's actually very funny that you say that, clever. That you opened up with a Ruo, wake up, wake up, wake up, because I had a very odd experience. Not just, I want to say 20 minutes ago. I was watching another YouTuber stream, Olga Okami, and she raided into a VTuber, some French VTuber, with a really wild looking bunny uh, model that had like the big floppy ears and had like bandaged ears, and then like she was had initial D in the background, and she was talking about how she was listening to Euro beat, which is like initial D and stuff, like uh deja vu and stuff, which is funny because that's kind of what happened to me. I had a moment of deja vu, or not deja vu, rather deja. I believe it's called rear or rere. French, and you hate the French, clever. Because for some reason I got this experience that I had seen this VTuber before, and that I had participated in a raid. Not I didn't even I had a dream anyway. It feels like I know that character from a dream, or at least something similar to it. But I think the fact that I watch a lot of VTubers and I'm often doing raids, you might have a dream every now and again, and I do for what they did to my great great grandfather's empire. Uh oh, is that the Germans? I don't know which one that is. Um, but I had this like weird experience. Welcome in, Catero. How are you? How are you doing, Catero? Catero is another VTuber, another good, cool guy. I hope you're doing well. Um, but yeah, I had this like experience while raiding into that VTuber, that I'd seen her before, and that I said the exact same things that I said as I was typing my message. That's kind of where I got the feeling that I had experienced this before, and it was a very very weird feeling. And I've actually had that multiple times throughout my life. It's one of those things that is very strange. It feels like you're almost predicting the future in some way, or you're experiencing the future before it happens, which to me is like deja vu is sort of like, I know it can occur due to like a time lag between your brain. I've heard this before, that apparently it can be like, you can look at a clock, but it will take a moment for like the movement of your eyes to settle, so it will look like the clock pauses for longer than it does. And then like it can be like, wait, didn't the clock move? Didn't the clock already like tick onto that next second when it should have, but like your brain just didn't process it? Or I don't remember the exact way it works sometimes, but like the dreaming thing is a completely different thing altogether. To me, that's way more scary. I remember I had one before, ages ago. I remember I had a dream where it was like some event was on. It was New Year's or something, and I stepped out of my house into the back garden, and my little cousin ran up to me, and I picked him up, and I looked up and I saw like my aunt standing a bit further up, and that we were about to launch some fireworks from the back garden. And then a year later, essentially that happened. Now, what ended up happening was my little cousin, unfortunately, had a spark from the fireworks fall down onto him, and he got very, very sad. Or at least something fell down onto him. I think it was some kind of like ember or something. He didn't get hurt. I think he just got like kind of scared. He was quite young, which is why even when I was like, I wasn't that old at the time this happened, but he was still a little babby, just running around the place. Yeah, poor baby. Uh, it's weird seeing them all grown up now. It really, really is. Not all grown up. I'm not like an old man yet, even though I feel like it with some of the new memes that are coming out these days, and I feel like an old man not understanding them. You could fix that. I could fix what? Being an old man? You sound like an old man. That hurts. Wait, do you want to sound like is sounding like an old man good for like these memes now? Sorry, I thought you meant like my voice sounds old. I was like, that's rude. But yeah, I mean that's how it feels. That's how it feels. It's like back in my day, the memes were better. They weren't just toilet humor. And then it cuts to the memes, and it's like fucking. What was that one that was really big for a while? The Galagala Schlab Schlab guy. He was disgusting to look at. Back in my day, memes were troll faces and you mad. It was the golden era of memes. That one I never got with Haru. Oh wait, I think I might. Yeah, the Globaga thing, whatever that was. That was a weird time. How did I get onto memes? Anyway, I'm gonna lower my voice a little bit. I just watch different memes. I feel like uh, if you're not like on certain areas of the internet, certain memes will just completely pass you by. I might need to slightly up my audio, or can you guys? Is my voice audible like this, kind of talking softly? Because this is probably how I'm going to read the book. Maybe hang on, let me try something real quick. Let me just move the mic more like this, and now it should be a little bit louder, even though I'm talking kind of in the same way. Relive picking up your little cousin with kids. Ah, I see. It wasn't just that. It was like the whole event and where people were standing and like what was happening in the dream. Although I will say I do want children. I do want children. D. Wait, D. Sorry, no, I read D because uh, I saw audio good and I was reading it as I said that. So I do want children. Clever. No pressure or anything. I think at least like two. I wish femboys could give me children. Same. You guys are goofy little guys. I'm sure there's many people who wish they could do such a thing. I can hear the next door neighbors singing. Well, I can't blame them. I often sing in my room, so I'm sure they hear me. But we're going to be doing getting back into reading streams. At least once a week, I think. Maybe more. But I'm currently tapping. I don't know if the microphone is in the right position. I have a hardback with a book cover. Uh, it's quite a uh, grotesque book cover. I won't lie. It's a guy's face and he's missing an eye and he's a big scare over his head. People have tried. Who ends up? Ew, Toete. Ew. I like short stacks more though. Mm. Maybe don't be as explicit with that, please. That's a little. Let's make Macedon great. Yes. Wait, how do you pronounce it Macedon or Macedon? Because technically back then, I believe ancient Greek did not have the soft C. That was a development that occurs later. So I know, I imagine most people probably do use the Macedon pronunciation. That does sound cool, but Macedon is the way I would do it. Or, but yes, we're going to be reading a book by the name. We're going to be reading a book titled Philip of Macedon, Philip II of Macedon, Greater than Alexander, by Richard A. Gabriel. Now, I read this book a long time ago, and I found it was probably one of my favorite history books. Essentially, it looks at the career of, well, Alexander the Great's father, Philip of Macedon, and it really paints the picture of not just a very good general, and no one can deny that Alexander himself was a fantastic and innovative general and tactician, but it also shows Philip as a man who is an, an expert diplomat, an expert uh, statecrafter, military innovator. Really, he sets the stage for Alexander to begin his conquest. He develops everything in terms of the innovations within the Macedonia uh, or Macedonian army, the phalanx, the companion cavalry, things around equipment and rations that extend their ability to operate further from the capital, from their essentially their logistic depots, one could say. He really did work amazingly to figure out that type of stuff, and he once he dies, Alexander essentially is bequeathed all of this. And of course, we never really got to see exactly how Alexander could match up in those aspects to his father, because Alexander's empire was a very, very fragile thing. That once he died, while the successors to Alexander, for a while anyway, pretended as if they were managing the empire, eventually all the sons of Alexander and the pretenders to his throne uh, were murdered and killed. And I believe it was with the killing of was it Alexander's half son? I believe it was. Um, was it his half brother? I think it might have been his half brother. One of them, anyway. I can't remember the exact individuals. There was so many different personalities. But with the killing of him, the various groups that had the Antigonids, the uh, Seleucids, and Ptolemies. Essentially, they were having kids everywhere too. There was a lot, and it gets very confusing. Um, they essentially casted off this idea of being an actual empire, an Alexandrian empire. Especially the Ptolemies are sort of an interesting family. Um, but they casted off this idea of being an empire and became their own kingdoms. The anti-Asp. uh, but all of this begins with Philip of Macedon and his the OG Habsburgs. Yeah, I was gonna say that probably makes more sense. The proto Habsburgs. Uh, but all that begins with Philip of Macedon. Now, I find the history of Greece very interesting in terms of you can really see a certain timeline with the Persian invasion, the rise of Athens as a major power, the various leagues that get set up under Athens and Sparta and other groups, the Peloponnesian Wars that completely crippled the Greek armies and basically led the way for where we find ourselves at the beginning of this book with Philip of Macedon taking the throne. But I imagine he might give a brief introduction to the beginnings. So back when keeping it in the family still made. mm. um, but I think we'll get into the book. So whether you are listening to simply have someone in the background while you work or ASMR to fall asleep to, whichever one it is, I hope the reading is suitable. So let's get into Richard A. Gabriel's Philip II of Macedonia, Greater than Alexander. There's quite a couple of illustrations and maps that he has that I think probably next stream I will have pictures for, but it'll take a while for us to get to where those are relevant. Chapter 1, Philippus Macedonius. A full moon hung in the night sky, casting shadows across the motionless shapes scattered on the rocky ground. The air was thick with the odour typical of late summer evenings in Greece, that mixture of lingering heat and approaching coolness. Moisture from the dampening night collected on the grass as wisps of fog drifted silently over the field. Here and there, patches of damp vapour floated above the black shapes before covering them like blankets, the way a mother covers a sleeping child to guard his slumber. The dead who lay on the ground were the debris of battle, sprawled into grotesque shapes where they had fallen as if from some great height. Now and then the night's stillness was disturbed by the sound of suffering, as one of the dying fought his way to consciousness for a few moments before falling back into a painless dark. 5,000 men lay there. Most of them were dead. Others were taking far too long to die. Against the moonlight came a solitary figure, wobbling, struggling to keep his balance on his lame leg. The old soldier stumbled drunkenly over a pile of corpses that blocked his way. Somewhere near the centre of the battle line, where the corpses were thickest, he stopped, and drank from the wine jug he carried in the crook of his mangled arm. He wiped drops of the cool liquid from his lips with the back of his hand, and looked out over the field, his face twisted into a satisfied smile. He began to sing, at first only to himself, and then his voice gradually became louder and louder until it echoed into the night. Then Philip II of Macedonia began to dance upon the dead at Cheronia. Oh, hang on. There's a load of notes. I'll I will check the notes and make sure that we're not missing anything too important. But many of the notes will be sort of references. I do hate when books do that. I much prefer when books uh, keep their notes and their and sources separate. And notes at the bottom of a page are much more preferable. But this incident is reported in various forms in various fragments. So Theopompus, Diodorus, Plutarch, and various others. Philip II of Macedonia, 382 to 336 BC, father of Alexander the Great, dynastic heir to the Argead kings, who traced their lineage to Heracles, known as Hercules in Latin, son of the Temenid family from Argos that had ruled Macedonia since the 8th century BC, unifier of Greece, author of Greece's first federal constitution, creator of the first national state in Europe, the first general of the Greek imperial age, founder of Europe's great land empire, and Greece's greatest general, was one of the preeminent statesmen of the ancient world. It was Philip who saved Macedon, or Macedonia. Tell me, how would you guys prefer to be pronounced? Macedonia or Macedonia, and Macedon or Macedon? I feel like most people probably would prefer the soft S, Macedonia. It might be. I think I'll stick with that. It was Philip who saved Macedonia from disintegration, military occupation, and eventual destruction by securing it against external enemies and by bringing into existence Europe's first national territorial state, an entirely new form of political organization in the West. Having made Macedonia safe, Philip developed mining, agriculture, urbanization, trade, commerce, and Greek culture, and transformed a semi feudal, tribal, pastoral society into a centralized national state, governed by a powerful monarchy and protected by a modern army. Macedon. Mm, not Mac. I change the pronunciation every time someone looks at me funny. Thank God you guys don't. I can't see you guys because I'd probably be changing it multiple times. I probably will accidentally just like say it in random ways. Uh, Philip achieved it all over 23-year reign marked by a program of territorial expansion and military conquest, and in the process he created a Macedonian army that revolutionized warfare in Greece and became the most efficient fighting force the Western world had yet seen. Through shrewd statecraft and military force, Philip doubled the size of Macedonia and incorporated most of the Balkans into the Macedonian state. This accomplished, he overpowered the Greek city states and, under his political leadership, united them for the first time in history in a federal constitutional order and directed them towards the greater strategic visions of conquering Persia. This was the League of Corinth, which, of course, Macedonia was the leader of, the head of. Supposedly, the others had equal say, but of course not. Philip used every means at his disposal in an effort to reach his goals: diplomacy, bribery, intimidation, deceit, subversion, sabotage, assassination, marriage, betrayal, war, and on occasion he even, scrupulously, kept his promises. In short, Philip used all the same means his enemies, the political leaders of the Greek city states, commonly employed. Let me just check the notes for anything interesting. The first great general of the Greek imperial age, Philip was one of those rare military men who saw the political and cultural world around him was changing, and that by mastering this change he could shape his own age and the future. Had there been no Philip to bring the Macedonian national state into existence, to assemble the economic and military resources that unite Greece, to create the bold strategic vision of conquering Persia, and to invent the first modern, tactically sophisticated, and strategically capable military force in Western military history as the instrument for accomplishing that vision, the exploits of Philip's son Alexander in Asia would not have been possible. Philip had provided the means, the methods, and the motives that lay behind Alexander's achievements. History may remember Alexander as a romantic international hero, but it was Philip who was the greater general and national king. And I think as well, the talk about strategically capable, is something that we definitely get into, not just tactically, but I think the strategic aspect of his vision is very impressive. Philip was born in 382 BC, the youngest of three legitimate sons of King Amyntas III of Macedonia and his wife Eurydice. How do you pronounce that again? Eurycides. Eurycides. A princess of the. Oh god. It's going to get a little tricky, I bet. Uh, I think there was a guy you called out Alexander. I think there was a guy you called out Alexander and told him if it wasn't for his father, he wouldn't have half he had. He killed him and then he cried because he said he was right. Very bipolar man. Oh, that called out Alexander for that. I that story sounds familiar. But yeah, Alexander was certainly. I mean, for all he accomplished in the sense, like it's almost hard. I think anyone would have delusions of grandeur, and it didn't help that his mother constantly whispered in his ear that he was the descendant of Hercules, or like a direct descendant of the gods. He was essentially a demigod, and then essentially he becomes a god in the eyes of the Egyptians and cults. Excuse me. He starts being given uh, divine kind of rewards in cities that he saves, or well, say that he takes over and uh, establishes and stuff. So so much goes on. It's such a massive change from even the Peloponnesian War just a couple of decades earlier. You now have, following on from Alexander, you have all the different successor kingdoms being seen as gods in their kingdoms. So it's a very very different development that occurs from Alexander and his massive ego. And his wife Eurycides, a princess of the Lycestian royal house, one of the cantons of Upper Macedonia, Amyntas fathered three other sons and a daughter by his second wife, Gygaea. All of the king's sons were considered legitimate heirs since there was no formal requirement of primogeniture in Macedonia, that being the eldest son succeeds, a circumstance that often complicated the problems of royal succession when kings produced multiple claimants to the throne, and I imagine often every single one of the other kids gets killed, or at least sent away very far. There was a major reason, this was a major reason, why the 5 century long turbulent rule of the Temenid dynasty had been marked by civil wars, assassinations, hostage taking, incest, and other horrors following the death of a king. Foreign enemies such as Athens, Thebes, and Illyria repeatedly took advantage of these conditions to weaken Macedonia by interfering in its domestic politics and at times even installing their own client kings. Outside forces drove Philip's father from his throne in 393 to 392 and again in 388 BC, only to have other outside powers help him regain his position. In the year that Philip was born, the Illyrians defeated Amyntas again and occupied much of Lower Macedonia, exacting hostages and tributes. Let me just check the any interesting notes. Note 8, Diodorus says that Philip's father also sent Philip as a hostage to the Illyrians when he was an infant, but his story is not credible. Okay. Near the end of his life, Amyntas was challenged by Ptolemy of Acorus, a senior member of a branch of the royal family, who claimed the right to succeed Amyntas upon the latter's death. Amyntas had already selected his eldest son, Alexander II, as his successor. To purchase Ptolemy's ambition, Amyntas offered his daughter to Ptolemy in marriage, an arrangement that sufficed for the moment. Philip was 12 when Amyntas died of old age, and Alexander II became king. So that's something that maybe some people don't know, that Alexander the Great is Alexander III of Macedonia. I'm pretty sure. Isn't he the third, or is he the fourth? Oh God, I'm pretty certain he is the third because his son named Alexander becomes Alexander the Fourth in the shared kingship, or I suppose empireship. Within months, Ptolemy raised a civil war against the new king, and may have been succeeding when Thebes sent its famous general Peliopidas with an army to restore Alexander to the throne and prevent Athens, which supported Ptolemy from increasing its influence in Macedonia. Peliopidas arranged a truce between Ptolemy and Alexander, ensuring that Alexander remained king. To guarantee the agreement, however, Peliopidas took young Philip, now 15, and the sons of 30 other prominent Macedonian barons to Thebes as hostages. Little more than a year later, 368 to 367 BC, Alexander II was assassinated while participating in the Zandika, Xandika. I'm going to pronounce it Zandika, a traditional war dance. The assassins were probably supporters of Ptolemy, who still had designs on the Macedonian throne. His plans were frustrated, however, when the Macedonian assembly selected Perdiccas, Alexander's brother, as king. Perdiccas was a 15-year-old minor, and the assembly appointed Ptolemy his guardian. Uh-oh. A pretender, Pausanias, probably the son of Philip's half-brother Archelaus, organized an invasion of eastern Macedonia with foreign help to seize the throne. In response, Queen Mother Eurydice, yes, that's it, Eurydice, obtained the support of the Athenian general Iphicrates, who intervened and supported Perdiccas with easy success. It was probably concern over this Athenian intervention that forced Thebes to send Peliopidas to Macedonia again that same year to make peace between Ptolemy and Perdiccas. Ptolemy, who was still regent, was forced into an alliance with Thebes. This time, Peliopidas took the son of 50 Macedonian barons as hostages to Thebes to ensure Macedonia's observance of this agreement. So, as we can see, the constant civil wars and infighting among the sons and other ambitious people is essentially causing them to just be a side player, a place where proxy wars are fought between Thebes and Athens, which at the time Thebes and Athens were sort of the two major powers in Greece. If I remember my history correctly, Sparta has sort of been after the battle of oh god, what was kind of like the last battle of the Peloponnesian War again? Well, not the Peloponnesian War. I mean, Sparta essentially won the Peloponnesian War, but afterwards the Theban Wars. Uh, I can't remember. I think it was the Battle of Cherione. Cariano? Cariane? I can't remember. Oh no. It's been ages since I looked at that time period to remember specific battles. But essentially, Sparta had lost, and even though it didn't really change much in terms of the balance of power, from what I remember, it did mean that Thebes was now established as the kind of other great power against Athens as Sparta began to wane, simply taking too many losses to the point that they even failed to keep the native population of Lacedaemon down with the re-establishment of the megalopolis. But we see that Macedonia is a side character, basically being juggled between the two different sides in an attempt to gain basically a puppet king on the throne to support them. In 365 BC, Perdiccas turned 18 and murdered Ptolemy. Wow, he's smart. And assumed the Macedonian throne in his own right. During this time, the great Theban general Epaminondas, which you can see the Thebans have a lot of amazing generals, Peliopidas and Epaminondas, was building a fleet of 100 triremes to counter the Athenian fleet, and Macedonia provided large quantities of timber under the terms of the Treaty of Alliance, perhaps a reward for his good fate obs- perhaps a reward for his good fate of the treaty. Perdiccas secured Philip's release from Thebes and brought him back to Macedonia. 18 years of age when he arrived in Pella, the capital, Philip was immediately appointed a provincial governor, probably in the region of Amphixetus, an area extending from the iron gates of the Axius River to the head of the Thermaic Gulf. The region was of great strategic importance for defending the country and Pella itself from raids by Paeonians, Thracians, and Athenian warships landing troops on the Macedonian coast. Philip was granted the authority to raise and train militia. The terrain in Amphixetus lent itself more to cavalry than to infantry, and it might have been there that Philip equipped his cavalry with the longer 9 to 10 foot Zyton, Ziston, the lance, to give an advantage over the shorter 6 foot spears and javelins the Greek and tribal cavalry traditionally used. So I might try and see if I can find a map, because I'm sure there's probably one in here in this book. Ah, there is. It shows Philip's Greece, map 1. Are there any other maps? Oh, they're spread out throughout the book, probably helping you see things as they go. Let me just look at the back list of illustrations. That's what I want. Logistical. Okay, yeah. So, oh, welcome in, Renata. Oh, Renata, thank you for joining us today. And that just reminds me, I apologize how loud that follow alert probably was. Oh no. I'll drop it down a little just in case someone raids. Hi, Renata. How are you? For those of you who don't know, Renata is the follow is not loud. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. You are soft. No, no, no. If one is falling asleep and enjoying the reading, a big something like that would definitely be a little bit annoying. But welcome in, Renata. It's a pleasure for you to join us today. Renata is a very great artist. Um, well known for her art of people like Momomo, which can sometimes get a little bit a little bit intriguing to say the least. But I definitely like their style. It's very nice art. And speaking of art, actually, you're next. I wait. What? I just. I mean, yes, I did commission Renata, but I just wait. No, Renata, that's scary. The way you said that. Tell me what brush you use. Oh yes, Renata Toete is also an artist. So you guys can be like art. You can have little art conversations. Welcome in, Renata. We're currently reading a book about Philip Macedon. But speaking of art, I might just quickly show some some really lovely art that I had done recently. Where is it? Ah, yes, there it is. This was some. Oh my god, it's really big. This was some art I skebbed by an absolutely fantastic artist who I've always loved their stuff for. Someone by the name of Genzuki Tojiro. He draws a lot of really great art of him. He's a Niji Sanji VTuber, JP. Uh, but big thanks to him. It turned out really gorgeous. I kind of just gave him a general pose, and I kind of told him to feel free to kind of mess around with it, or you know, to come up with your own designs. The one I had was just kind of sitting in the forest, but he decided to incorporate the stream, and he has my legs dangling off the stream. Beautiful, Ruru. I honestly, his art is so beautiful. I think if you want like a beautiful style, his is perfect in terms of obviously it's not very masculine and manly, but sometimes you want something a little bit different at times, and this is definitely one of those that it's so lovely, it's so pretty, it's so pretty. I really do love it. Sorry, I'm just admiring it right now. The only issue is that, and I will show there's a slightly brighter version. That's just sort of, I think to give it like the feel of like an image, like a worn photo. I That's the only way I can describe it. It's a little bit dull in color, so there's also a remove. There's also a brighter version where my eyes are lovely and blue, and there you go, there Toete. That you should enjoy those. Anyway. uh, ew, that was an ugly. That was an ugly laugh. That was like a really. I'd call this your sister if I didn't have a redhead OC built like that. It could be a female version of Rua. I did recently accidentally post somewhere. I did recently post somewhere in a thread that was meant for female tubas, and they're saying too late. Fem Rua is now canon. It's so over. It's scary. But let's get back into our reading. I'm gonna need to get. Maybe I should get Haru to draw an animated emote of her of like me being beaten with water bottles. Speaking of, I'm gonna take a quick drink of water. I was actually considering using my ASMR microphone, my 3DO, for reading, but I don't know Beaten. Yeah, uh, Haru, an art viewer, an art friend of mine, um, always joins and goes, drown check, and then she drew a little emote of her throwing some water at my face. beating Rua. No, don't beat me, Renata. I'll beat you up. I'll beat you up. You know that I can grow to like 15 feet, and I can just like kick you. I can punch you. I'll like score a field goal if for some reason we're an American pitch. I'll score a point in Gaelic football. And score conversion in rugby. Punting Renata. No beating. Where were we? Oh, yes. During this time, Perdiccas likely arranged a marriage between Philip and Philia, the daughter of the royal house of Eliomotis, Elim Eotis, and the first of Philip's 7 or possibly 8 wives. My man is rivaling King Henry VIII. Uh, Elimiotus was the nearest and most populous of the northern Macedonian cantons and an important strategic buffer against Illyria. Perdiccas hoped to secure its support against the Illyrians through Philip's diplomatic marriage, just as Perdiccas' father had secured the support of the Lycitas canton when he married Eurydice, the daughter of Arahabis of Lycitas. The alliance seems to have been a success, given that Elymiocian cavalry later fought alongside Philip in his war with Bardilus of Illyria. In 359 BC, the Macedonian army was destroyed in a battle with Bardilus, Macedonia's perennial enemy. Perdiccas was killed along with 4,000 men. Upon hearing the news, the Macedonian assembly met and chose a new king. So this is actually an interesting aspect of Macedonian tradition and culture. If I remember correctly, it essentially works like this. There's a council of kind of, I guess, the higher up cantons, the kind of most esteemed men. Now they will choose the heir from the list of heirs of the king, but typically there's always one particular person that is, it's the expected heir of the throne. But after making this choice, the king must also be accepted by his companion cavalry and from his infantry. He must be accepted. He must present himself to his army, and they must accept him as their leader, because that's what kings often were in these days. Alongside being, politicians, they were generals and warriors. Drawing on the work of the historian Theopompus, a contemporary of Philip's, the Roman historian writer Marcus Junianus Justinius, or Justin, says conversely that the assembly appointed Perdiccas' 5-year-old son, Amyntas IV, king, and named Philip, his uncle, as regent. Justin says that Philip was not formally elected king until 2 years later, 357 BC. And I believe for children in that situation, they would be elected king, but like it wouldn't be until they were 16 or so, or whatever age it was for them to become a full-fledged king, that they would go through that process of being accepted by the army. Justin says that Philip was not formally elected king until 2 years later. At the time, the more dangerous wars were impending, and Philip assumed the kingship under compulsion from the people when Amyntas was deposed. Although Philip was young by modern standards to assume such responsibility, he was not so by the standards of the ancient world. At 23, Philip was older than Octavian was at the death of Caesar, the start of the final Roman civil wars, older than Philip's brother Perdiccas was when he was named king, and older than his own son Alexander would be when in his time he ascended to the throne. Philip immediately plunged into the intrigues of court politics. No fewer than 5 would-be usurpers challenged him for the throne. Macedonian politics was not for the weak or squeamish. The history of Philip's own family provided a sufficient example of court politics marked by murder, corruption, bribery, betrayal, adultery, incest, and torture. Philip moved immediately against his rivals by murdering his half brother, Archelaus. His two other half brothers were driven into exile, and the two additional claimants from a rival branch of the royal family were soon killed. Welcome in. Oh my god, that felt so loud in my ears. Thank you very much for the raid, Navarre. Welcome in, welcome in. In the middle of the sentence. That's fine, that's fine. I hope you're all doing well. I might just finish off this paragraph. His two other. Over the next year, Philip eliminated them all in one way or another. With his throne secured, at least for the moment, Philip turned his attention to protecting Macedonia. It was actually good timing. But welcome in, everyone. Thank you very much for the raid. Raided my Nevers. Yeah, raiding and pillaging time. Don't you guys go raiding my camp. You're coming to my camp, and then we're gonna go raid someone with like for some cows. We're gonna go raiding for cows and gold and silver, and I get most of it. Reading ASMR. I'm glad you like that, troublemaker. And welcome in, Navir. Thank you so much for sharing your community. I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Rua Uaquilta. Sorry, it's late. My brain no working. There is raiding later. Yes, yes, we will raid. You guys are raiding, but like you're joining me as a raid party to like steal cows because back in ancient Ireland, cow raiding was very important. But I do welcome you all to my humble little forest. But as I said, my name is Rua Uquilta. I am a half human, half Tuatha Tuatha being the god peoples of Ireland who lived on the island before the Milesians arrived from Spain. So quite a complicated history there. That's the last invasion uh, in a series of invasions that is told by the Lower Gobla Éireann, the Book of Invasions regarding Ireland. Ooh, I'm from a peaceful elf tribe, and besides, my tribal days are behind me, so this is the only type of raiding I can do now. Well, that's fine. I suppose these days we do have to be a little bit more peaceful. I can't just go raiding my like friends and then stab them. Well, maybe I can. I do play Battle Brothers, and I make my friends in there, my tuba friends, and I watch them get stabbed. I watched one get decapitated. Uh, oh, can I ask you something about Ireland? Absolutely, feel free. Feel free. I will attempt to answer it. Elf friend, I do like elves. They're quite nice. Often the Tuatha Dé were depicted as elves. Some people argue, or try and argue anyway, that much of what Tolkien uh, takes to be his elvish mythology, or at least his inspiration for his elves, come from the Tuatha Dé of Ireland. Even though I believe Tolkien expressed disdain for the Irish language, which was kind of a little funny because it is quite an awkward language. I suppose in comparison to many others that were not Irish is interesting as it wasn't influenced by what's it called, by the Roman Empire. So fate mentions a very famous Irish warrior that got betrayed by his bride. Is there a story about that? Oh god, what's that one again? Um, I, f- I feel like I remember. There's a lot of stories about betrayal in Irish mythology. I apologize. It's been quite a while since I've delved into my manuscripts. By the way, I did mistype your name twice, Rule, while trying to read. I would be amiss if I did not mention that. That's totally fine, Navarre. Uh, my name is very, very awkward for people. Um, Fonzie, I will have to get back to you on that one. I'll delve into my books, my manuscripts, and try and find because I it sounds familiar. Diarmid Uadivna, Duivna. That yeah, that does sound familiar, but I can't remember the exact story of that. It might be. I don't think I actually read the story itself. I think I read a book that just referenced it, but it didn't go into it in depth. But perhaps someday I can do a reading stream where we just read through various Irish mythology. Um, I myself these days are heavily focused in philosophy and theology and kind of things away from Irish mythology. So I will have to refresh my knowledge of that proper. Uh, I do apologize that I couldn't adequately answer your question, but I will. Let me hang on. Let me save that. I think it's very interesting how a lot of people could have some very. Oh, actually, I apologize. I apologize. Wait, I forgot to do the thingy, that thingy, the shouting out, the shouting outs of the twima of the tuba. So there we go. They were playing ASMR. I hear that's a hip new game. It's fine. My favorite character is Diomedes. I will listen to. I would like to listen to about him someday. Ooh, name pronunciation. Rua ua quilta. Rua ua quilta. So essentially, it's sort of like the D is silent in Rua, and then ua is simply ua, and quilta. Well, uh, don't worry that that C makes kind of a Q sound. It's okay. It's sort of like Q and then the word wheel, and then ta. Rua ua quilta. It's very funny. I actually experienced the tuba getting it right for the first time, uh, like without having me to explain it. It was amazing. I was very, very impressed. They tried to pronounce it and then failed, and were like, "Wait, I'm just gonna call you Rua," and I was like, "Oh my god, that's exactly what my name is. Amazing, good job." Many people go like Ruadh, rude. They get very confused. But thank you again, Never, for introducing your community to me. I I hope you take some time to relax after stream, after giving some ASMR, and go get some food. I bring rats. I promise they're plague free. Plague free rats and like playful rats are very, very cute. I had a friend who had a pet rat before, and I petted him, and he was cute. He climbed on my chest and just sat there, and then he scurried off. I believe my history in RP servers. uh, I think I was saying that I find it very interesting that some games like Fate and some other areas can actually give people a very strong knowledge of like Irish mythology, possibly even like just like broader than my own, because they'll have like all these characters that you interact with all the time. I feel like if you play a game a lot, you'll remember the characters and their stories. For me, it's been hundreds of years since hundreds and hundreds of years since I've interacted with those people. All around me are familiar faces, worn out faces, worn out places. Bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. That's a great song. Dynasty Warriors made me want to read about Lu Bu. That man was a menace. Oh, I had my rat cam on today. Oh, I'm gonna have to check it out because one of mine has surgery tomorrow, and I wanted everyone to see them and wish them good luck. Well, I will send them my deepest good luck wishes. I'm sure they will be very, very, very good. We'll say a little prayer for your little rat friends, and hopefully they get back to you, or hopefully whoever is going in for surgery gets back to you safe and sound and happy. Maybe you'll see them and they'll just be like a little drugged up. They'll be like just stumbling around, dancing. But I think I'll get back into reading. But thank you again, Naver. Where are we? Oh yes, we were over here. Philip's Homeric world. To understand Philip's character and behavior, one must first understand the land and culture that shaped him. Culturally, the Greeks of Philip's day regarded Macedonia as a geographic backwater inhabited by untrustworthy barbarians who spoke an uncouth form of Greek, were governed by primitive political institutions, and subscribed to customs, social values, and sexual practices that bordered on the unspeakably depraved. Dressed in bear pelts, drank their wine neat, and were given to regular bouts of incest, murder, and regicide. To the degree that the Greeks thought about isolated Macedonia at all, it was from the perspective of snobbish and sophisticated contempt. Because of Macedonia's geographic location and the peculiar circumstances of its historical development, Macedonian society retained a number of practices that were Homeric in origin, form, and function. Where the Greeks regarded the city state as an expression of advanced political culture, Macedonia remained a land of clans and tribes held together by the bonds of warriorhood, dynastic bloodlines, and a powerful monarchy. In many ways, the Macedonia of Philip's day was very much the society of the Mycenaean age, a male dominated warrior society that had long since died out in Greece. Have a penny. Thank you, clever. Thank you for the penny. I'll put it into an investment fund, and then in a couple of decades, that penny will be worth $1. Not even. It'll be worth like 5 cents. No, wait, it will be worth zero because what's the chance of our economy being around in like a couple of decades? No, we're positive. We're optimistic. It'll be worth like 50 cents. But thank you for the penny. Uh, Philip's world was one of tribal barons, one where the Iliad was not only an ancient heroic tale, but also a reflection of how men still lived. As king, Philip was akin to Achilles, first among equals, the bravest and most able warrior, chieftain, and protector of his people. The Mycenaean Wanax, king, who maintained his authority over fierce warriors by personal example and a lineage of royal blood derived from the gods. Penny a day keeps the inflation at bay, or so it rhymes at least. I didn't they have to get rid of the penny because it literally cost more money to make a penny than it to produce a 1 cent coin. It sounds like you could easily bankrupt yourself. But the description here of Macedon does certainly sound uh, Homeric and also sounds very akin to how Ireland is described long ago around my time. Yeah, the Fianna, of which I am a member, one of the few surviving, if not the only surviving member. Uh, I do not know if any did survive the final battles. I know that Quilta and some others did end up meeting St. Patrick when he arrived here, or so the stories are told. But back then, those those much of what's described here is also akin to ancient Ireland, tribes and clans and uh, dynastic warriors. The Fianna themselves, before Fionn, of course, Fionn's was a special group of extremely talented and powerful warriors. But the Fianna as an institution is actually a real thing. For even after the mythological age, it was still a reality. Uh, it was a society in which time for you to sleep. Good night, Fonzie. The Fianna were essentially bands of young men, typically aristocrats, who were tired of waiting for them to gain their land. They would go off and fight. and make a name for themselves and gain plunder and kind of become, capable warriors because such traits were desirable for when they would go on to take over. Oh, they wanted to do that with my currency as well, but they just started using cheaper metals instead. Like I mean, it's literally like you can definitely do that. You can just change the metals. What if you use gallium and you didn't tell anyone? You like you give a bunch of coins to someone and they put it into their pocket, and then they put it in later, and it's just a bunch of liquid, just a load of liquid. Because gallium is I think it's gallium anyway, is a metal that melts at body temperature. Probably why it wouldn't be a very good currency. Because of Macedonia's geographic content and the peculiar circumstances of its historical development, Macedonian society retained a number. Oh wait, we read this. Sorry. Uh, a lineage of royal blood derived from the gods. We liquidated your. That's silly. Philip ruled only so long as his barons respected and feared him. His position sustained by his dynastic lineage and reputation for bravery, and his position sustained by his Philip only ruled so long as his barons respected and feared him. His position sustained by his dynastic lineage and reputation for bravery, and could be removed by the will of the assembly. He sat among his barons and wore the same clothes, purple cloak, and broad-brimmed hat of the Macedonian aristocrat. He wore no royal insignia on his person to set him apart, dressed in clothes of simple homespun fashioned by his wife, and ate the same food as his men. There were no household slaves to wait on him at tables, as in the household of the Greek democracies, while most Macedonians could speak proper Greek, among themselves and especially when Philip addressed his soldiers and officers or his barons in the assembly. They spoke the more personal Macedonian dialect. When hearing cases brought by common subjects or in discussions with his barons in the assembly, Philip, just as anyone else, was called only by his name, his patronymic, and his ethnic without any honorific or title. He could be called Philippos Amintos Macedonius, or simply Philippos Macedonius, but not king. The only requirement when addressing the king in the assembly was that the speaker had to remove his helmet as a sign of respect. Among the troops, he addressed as fellow soldier, and he often engaged his men in public contests, wrestling contests. In all his years, Philip never described himself as king in any of his official documents or public statements. He was a Macedonian Achilles in every cultural sense. I have to call it a night as well, sadly. I hope you have a nice stream with everyone. And until next time, nighty night. Well, thank you again for raiding Navarre. Go take a nice nap, a nice sleep. I hope you get a lovely rest. Atsu. A warrior culture requires values, rituals, and ceremonies to define it, and the values of Philip's Macedonia were strongly similar to those of the Iliad's era, in particular those placed on the cult of the heroic personality. The highest social values were power, glory, or kaidos, and bravery, arete. Warriors were expected to demonstrate their bravery for the sake of honor, time, and reputation among fellow warriors. The noblest soldier was a warrior king fighting in defense of his people, and the appropriate arena of competition for reputation and honor was war, conquest, and performance on the field of battle. In a very important way, however, Philip's view of war as distinct from personal bravery was decidedly Homeric. Unlike the Iliad's heroes, this great warrior king who took the field every year of his 23-year reign, save one when he was recovering from wounds, took part in 28 campaigns and 11 sieges, who captured 45 cities, if one can trust Demosthenes, and who was seriously wounded at least 5 times, never went to war for its own sake or for personal glory. For Philip, war was first and foremost an instrument of state policy with which to achieve specific strategic objectives. It was always the continuation of policy by other means, in the genuine Clausewitzian sense. The rhetorician Polyaenus observed that Philip achieved no less through conversation than through battle, and by Zeus he prided himself more on what he acquired through words than on what he acquired through arms. This Clausewitzian view of war led Philip to become the greatest strategist of his time. So I mentioned this earlier, that Philip's strategic vision, he always had a certain plan in mind, and his actions were always towards that. While with Alexander, you might be able to critique Alexander that he was expansion for expansion's sake. He wanted to constantly go forward, constantly expand his realm, but what was the strategic vision, one could argue, other than conquest and even after he returned through the desert from India, he immediately started drawing up a sort of 5 year plan, uh, or sorry, his new plans for his invasion of North Africa and to take over Carthage and eventually seek to conquer this little group of people known as the Romans, who were uh, the Romani, who were starting to become a bit of a decently strong tribe. Of course, no one could have known at the time that eventually they would come to be the empire that Alexander envisioned. A number of rituals and ceremony in Philos Macedonia lend some credence to the Greek slur of barbarism, however. Dances were a common ritual. Philip's brother Alexander II was murdered during one of these performances. Witches too abounded. Philip's wife, Olympias, was said to be a witch who worshipped snakes, and to have had the quaint habit of taking the reptiles to her bed. Oh my god, imagine being with a girl who takes reptiles, like massive snakes and anacondas, to her bed. That would be scary. Another of Philip's wives, Niceopolis of Thessaly, was also reputed by Olympus to have been a witch. Interestingly, the two women turned out to be lifelong friends. One of the more curious and ancient Homeric practices was the Macedonian ritual of purifying the army as it set out for war. Priests cleaved a dog in two, and the army was made to walk between the severed halves to purify the soldiers. As the Macedonians' chief priest, Philip offered sacrifices daily for the protection of his people, and must have officiated at this ritual on more than one occasion. This all male, violent warrior culture forced men to prove their bravery at a young age. A man who had not yet killed a wild boar single handedly with a spear and without a net was not permitted to recline at a table and eat meat with his fellow warriors. Instead, he was required to sit upright for all to notice. The boar hunt had its origins in Greek mythology, where one of Heracles' 12 labours required him to slay the Erymanthian boar as punishment for killing his wife in a fit of rage. The Macedonians considered themselves descendants of Heracles, and the single-handed killing of a boar became a rite of passage for all young warriors. The wild northern European boar, is a dangerous and aggressive animal, averaging between 50 and 72 inches in length and 36 to 40 inches at the shoulder's height, and weighing from 60 to 100 pounds. To kill a boar without a net tossed over the animal to immobilize it, and armed with only a spear, was not a task for the faint-hearted. In yet another Homeric ritual, Macedonian youths who had not yet killed a man in battle were required to wear a cord around their waists to mark them as unblooded. Only when a young man had slain his first victim was the cord removed and the young warrior permitted to join the ranks of other warriors. As a young man, Philip was required to pass all these tests. The world of Philip's youth was a loud, clamorous, male world of rough soldiers who rode, drank, fought, and fornicated with rude energy and enthusiasm. We know little of Philip's formal education, but it was probably not much different from that of his sons Alexander's. Philip was taught to read and write at an early age. A personal tutor oversaw his literary education, and he, quote, was trained in all aspects of liberal education. including the major work of Greek literature, especially Homer. Music, too, was part of his curriculum. Philip's talent went unremarked, while Alexander was known to play the lyre, or the lyre, sorry. Great emphasis was placed on athletics, running and wrestling in the palestra, riding and hunting, and on military training and proficiency with weapons. This training included building the young man's physical endurance and ability to suffer those hardships likely to be encountered on campaign. Alexander said of his tutor, Leonidas, that his idea of breakfast was a long night's march and of supper, a light breakfast. That's really funny. That his idea of breakfast was a long night's march and of supper a light breakfast. uh, as part of his military training, Philip hunted other animals besides boars in the Macedonian forests. In a serious test of bravery, the animals Philip hunted with only a spear were lions, bears, panthers, and leopards. I think here might be a good point just to check the notes because I haven't really been reading through. So, note 13, a good while back. I have accepted Hammond's argument that the most trustworthy accounts of Philip's life are to be found in Diodorus and Justin. So, one from 30 to 50 BC and the other from Justin, AD 150, whose accounts can be traced. That's very weird. This author uses 30 to 50 BCE. I've been saying BC because that's just what I say. And then he says for Justin, who is in the AD, or as I think in the BCE that's CDE or something. He uses AD 150, which is actually the proper way. It shouldn't be like 557 AD. It should be AD 157. From I recently heard this apparently. It's meant to be with the way things are said. Whose account can be traced to four historians whose lives were contemporary with Philip's. While the interpretation of facts reported by these historians are certainly open to question, the facts themselves can be accepted with some certainty. The source historians are Ephorus, Theopompus, Marsyas, Macedon of Pella, and Demophilus, a son of Ephorus. So, for number 14, the selection of an infant king was not unknown in Macedonia. In one instance, the infant was brought to the battlefield in his cradle. Wow. Imagine being a soldier on the enemy army and, like, say you manage to beat them back, and then you just run into this cradle where a baby is there, and you're just looking around like, why is there a baby in the middle of the field? Why did they bring a baby here? Like, say you don't have any idea of the politics, and you're just like, I'm gonna move the baby out of the way. Mosaics from Macedonians' tombs portray these animals as having existed in Macedonia's in ancient time, where they were hunted with short spears. So that's just the passage we read about the lions and stuff. Finders keepers. Yeah, you run away with their king. You don't even realize, and then you find out that it's the king, and it's like, okay, I get a big bounty, a big ransom. The Homeric nature of Philip's Macedonia was most evident in how Philip was interred after his death. His funeral ceremonies strongly resembled those of Patroclus and other heroes portrayed in the Iliad. Philip's body was cremated in a wood fire that was hot enough to destroy the flesh but not the bones. Oh, apologies, I skipped a little bit. In yet another Homeric ritual, Macedonian youths who had not yet killed, we read this. As a royal prince, Philip attended the frequent symposia, the all-male eating and drinking bouts where drunken storytellers declaimed tales of bravery, war, killing, and exploits with women. Macedonian kings frequently entertained their friends and officers at these gatherings in much the same way a colonel entertained his officers at the mess in wartime. Here Philip heard the tales of Macedonia's history of suffering at the hands of the Illyrian, Paeonian, Molossian, Thracian, Athenian, Theban, and Phocian warriors. During his own life, Philip had witnessed Athenian and Theban armed interventions to settle Macedonian dynastic quarrels, the attempt on his father's life, the assassination of one brother, the death of another, the latter in a war with the Illyrians who had occupied much of the country. Philip himself had been made hostage by Macedonians' tormentors. Philip took it all in, drawing lessons that would serve him well as king when his country's fate was finally placed in his lands. The Homeric nature of Philip's Macedonia was evident in how Philip was interred after his death. His funeral ceremonies strongly resembled those of Patroclus and other heroes portrayed in the Iliad. Philip's body was cremated in a wood fire that was hot enough to destroy the flesh, but not the bones. His bones were retrieved from the ashes, carefully washed in wine, wrapped in purple cloth, and laid in a gold box, a larnax, before being placed in a vault covered with a mound of earth, or tumulus. As in the funeral of Patroclus, horses were sacrificed, and their remains left atop Philip's grave mound to decay. The body of Philip's assassin was hung on a cross above above the king's grave, for all to see before it was cut down and cast into the sea, the traditional punishment for those who had committed the sacrilege of killing a king. Two others implicated in the crime, Hieromenes and Arrhabaeus, were executed at the site of the grave, and their corpses allowed to rot on top of it. Philip's funeral rites were those observed for the kings of the Homeric age. I'd like a burial like that. That sounds pretty good. Maybe not with killing people on my grave. You guys can sacrifice some things, but unless I'm assassinated, then you guys can kill him on top. You can sacrifice him. No. We don't do people sacrifice. To the end, Philip was strongly influenced by the martial environment to which he was exposed as a youth, and in which he lived out his life. He remained a hard drinking, womanizing, courageous soldier and general who preferred the company of his men all his life. He was also thoroughly pragmatic, no doubt the result of his experience with the murderous court politics of his youth and his exposure to the lessons learned in the symposia. As with the heroes of the Iliad, Philip the warrior loved his fellow soldiers and had the greatest respect for deeds of personal courage and military valor. Wounds and injuries. Philip's world valued physical courage and bravery. Officers led from the front and risked their lives with their men. From all accounts, Philip was a remarkably brave man who suffered at least 5 serious wounds in combat. Theopompus makes such of Philip's tendency to drink to excess, although he allows that Philip was always clear-headed when it came to making decisions. No Macedonian warrior needed encouragement to drink, but Philip's wounds left him in constant pain, and alcohol likely reduced his suffering. He does not appear, however, to have been the alcoholic that Alexander became. While the Greeks drank their wine mixed with cold or warm water in a crater or mixing bowl, Macedonians drank their wine straight, imbibing its full 15 to 16% alcohol in the process. Thracians and Scythians also drank their wine neat, leaving the Greeks to regard the Macedonian habit as another barbarian custom. Philip suffered his first battle wound at the siege of Methone in 354 BC, while he was inspecting sheds used to provide siege machinery. A sniper on the city wall shot an arrow into Philip's right eye. Pliny the Elder tells us that Philip arrived at the field dressing station with the arrow still protruding from his eye. The Gauls were with Philip that day, for had the arrow struck head on, it would have penetrated his brain and killed him. Judging from the angle of the nick in the eye bone that forensic archaeologists found of Philip's skull, it is likely that he was wearing his iron helmet and had it tipped back on his head. The helmet deflected the arrow's trajectory and turned what might have been a direct hit into a glancing blow that left him alive, but blind and disfigured in his right eye. Philip was probably struck with the heavier Cretan arrowhead rather than the smaller Scythian point, since the arrow caused so much damage to the surrounding bone. Philip was treated by a Greek physician named Critobulus of Kos, whose reputation was made that day by successfully tending the king's wounds. Critobulus used an instrument called the spoon of Diocles to extract the arrowhead from Philip's eye socket. Our only description of his instrument comes from Celsus. Critobulus removed the arrow and extracted part of the eyeball itself, leaving the remainder in the eye socket to be consumed naturally by the body. The eye socket was stitched shut and predictably became infected. Yep, I was about to say. The dressing was changed each day for several weeks, and Philip given a course of purgatives to speed his healing. Yeah, take a sip of water. I need it. I can feel it in my throat a little bit. Cold water. Philip must have been in great pain, for when Methone fell a few days later, he allowed the residents to depart without further punishment, so that he could return to Macedonia quickly and recover from his wound. Wow, they are weirdly lucky. Pliny tells us that Critobulus achieved great renown for having extracted the eye of King Philip, and for having treated the loss of the eyeball without causing disfigurement of the face. To the contrary, Demetrius says that Philip was so sensitive about his disfigurement that the mere mention of it sent him into a rage. Philip was wounded again in 345 BC during his campaign against the Illyrians, a confederation of tribes occupying the plain around modern Kosovo and south to modern Metohija. Two tribes, the Dardanians and the Ardii, had formed an alliance that Theopompus says was 300,000 strong, forcing Philip to move quickly and prevent such strength from assembling on his borders. Philip deployed the full force of the Macedonian army and quickly defeated the Dardanians. He then marched to engage the Ardii. That's what I'm going to call them, the Ardii. The Ardii. No, the RDA. RDA, I think, who were led by Pluratos, the head of the royal house. The battle must have been a major engagement, and Philip himself was almost killed. A soldier named Pausanias covered Philip as he lay on the ground and shielded him from further blows, saving the king but dying himself in the process. The Greek scholar Didymus Chalcentaurus tells us that Philip was badly wounded along with 150 of his officers. Wow, that's a significant. Uh, Apologies, I hear people walking around. Uh, okay, so I think I'll probably finish off this little bit about this battle, and then I might call it for today. The Macedonian Companion Officer Corps, the the Astatatori, Torii, comprised 800 officers, assuming a uh, sorry, I keep having to. Hang on, excuse me a moment. Okay, hopefully. Uh, Assuming a reasonable number, say 20 of them were killed in action, Philip's officers suffered almost 21% casualties in the battle. Didymus says that the RDA were destroyed only after Philip's cavalry undertook a long and lethal pursuit after them. Philip suffered two wounds that day. First, a glancing blow from a cavalry lance broke his collarbone. Oh my god. He suffered a far more serious injury when his lower legs were smashed, perhaps by a club wielded. His lower leg bones were smashed, perhaps by a club wielded by an infantryman, as Philip sat upon his horse. It was probably this second wound that made Philip lame for the rest of his life. In modern medical parlance, a tib fib, referring to the tibia and fibula bones that make up the lower leg, fracture, remains one of the more difficult injuries to set properly without producing atrophy and leaving the injured leg shorter. A break in the two bones results in their muscles pulling the bones in opposite directions, so that the ends of the break tend to slide over one another. To set them correctly, the bones have to be pulled straight and tension maintained on them for several weeks. This treatment requires a special splint. The simple wood slate and bandage splint that Greek medicine used in Philip's day would not have sufficed. The ends of the broken bone in Philip's leg would have overlapped, retarding healing and caused a raised callus or lump to form at the break's location. These conditions would have deformed the leg's lower shape and could well have left it shorter by 2 inches. The broken bones would have taken 8 to 10 months or even longer to heal and rendered Philip lame, by which the Greeks meant that he had walked with a pronounced limp. Professor Manolius Andronicus, when excavating Philip's tomb in the late 1970s, found evidence that Philip's leg wound may be what crippled him. Andronicus found a pair of golden greaves or metal sheets used to protect the lower legs of Macedonian infantrymen and cavalrymen. The greaves in Philip's tomb were not symmetrical. The greave for the left leg was 3.5 centimeters, almost 2 inches shorter than the one for the right leg. In addition, the front of the left greave had an outward bulge in the formation of the tibia, on exactly where the break in Philip's bones would have caused a lump to form. The left greave had to be deliberately manufactured to accommodate a man whose left leg was shorter than his right, and whose lower leg bones were deformed. How long is this first chapter? I think it's quite long. The pages are quite big, and the text is a decent size. Where are we? Okay, I think I'll finish this. There's about a page and a bit left on this kind of section of this chapter. In winter of 1339, or of 1339, 339 BC, after completing a successful campaign against the Scythians on the Danube River, the Istrus in antiquity, Philip was wounded again. Philip had taken captive some 20,000 young men, women, and children who he intended to settle in Macedonia's border towns. He also captured 20,000 mares, which he was going to use to supply his army and to market for cash. Returning to Macedonia, he crossed the lands of the Triballi, a warrior people known for using long lances when fighting on horseback. The Triballi demanded a portion of Philip's booty as a price for a safe passage through their territory. Philip refused. In the resulting battle, the Triballi made off with many of the captives and a portion of the booty, and left Philip so severely wounded on the battlefield that his officers thought he was dead. Justin tells the story this way. But as Philip was returning from Scythia, the Triballi met him, and refused to allow him passage unless they received a share of the spoil. Hence arose a dispute, and afterward a battle, in which Philip received so severe a wound through his thigh that his horse was killed by it, and while it was generally supposed that he was dead, the booty was lost. Thus the Scythian spoil, as if attended with a curse, had almost proved fatal to the Macedonians. Didymus tells us that Philip was struck in the leg by a sarissa. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's the spear that the Macedonian phalanx ends up using, by which he means a Scythian long cavalry lance, and not the Macedonian infantry sarissa. Yeah, so it's a different name. It's the same name, but a different thing. Philip was not accidentally wounded by one of his own men, as sometimes has been claimed. Demosthenes says that Philip's hand was mutilated in the incident, most likely as a result of his horse falling on him after it was also struck by the same lance that wounded Philip. Also, Philip may have put his hand down to break his fall as the animal fell and rolled. Philip's hand and arm might have struck the ground with such force that he broke his wrist and some of the bones in his hand, leaving his hand mutilated and of limited use. The fall rendered Philip unconscious, as Plutarch implies when he tells us that Philip's troops, seeing his body lying on the battlefield, thought that he had been killed. A controversy arises over whether it was this wound inflicted by the Triballi or the earlier wound suffered at the hands of the Illyrians that caused Philip to become lame. It seems likely that the second wound would have caused Philip's lameness, for Philip's horse to have been killed so quickly by the same lance that struck Philip's leg. It seems unlikely that the second wound could have caused his lameness. It seems unlikely for Philip's horse to have been killed so quickly by the same lance that struck Philip in the leg. The animal's heart must have been pierced. A horse's heart is located on the left side of the body, just above its front legs. To strike the horse's heart after piercing Philip's leg, the attack had to come from Philip's left, while the lance moving at a downward trajectory. Cavalry lances typically rested on the cavalryman's shoulder, prior to being thrust downward at the target. Mounted, Philip's left leg was behind the foreleg of his horse, so the lance's direction and trajectory came from behind and to Philip's left, exactly what one would expect if the attacker closed in a surprise attack from behind. Under these circumstances, there was good chance that the lance struck Philip's thigh before continuing through the horse's body and striking the animal's heart. Welcome in, Haru. Drown check. Thank you very much. I will indeed take a sip. Thank you for joining us. And laughs a lot. Redeems a stretch. Welcome. Oh god, I moved you guys. I apologize. My book caught the cable. Oh, I'm gonna need to do a proper stretch later. Get down and do some like yoga poses or something. I'm a little bit stiff after the gym. This week back to the gym, my kind of first couple of days back. The force required for the lance to penetrate Philip's thigh and the body of the horse and to pierce the animal's heart would have been insufficient if the lance had struck a bone in Philip's leg. That obstruction would have considerably reduced the weapon's momentum and likely changed its trajectory as well. In all probability, the lance that struck Philip produced a serious flesh wound to the thigh, but did not strike and break a bone. A flesh wound could neither have shortened Philip's left leg nor produced the lower leg's deformity, as indicated by the greaves found in Philip's tomb. The severity of Philip's wounds can to some extent be assessed by the time Philip required to recover from each of them. Philip was wounded at Methone in August 354 BC, but was back in action that winter when his army marched into Thrace. The injury suffered against the Triballi occurred in the winter of 339 BC. However, by the following autumn, some 6 months later, Philip led his army into Phocis. The wound the Illyrians inflicted to Philip's shin in the spring of 345 BC seems to have required the longest period of convalescence. Philip did not undertake a major campaign again for more than a year, and while the historical record is not complete, 344 BC seems to be the only year of Philip's reign in which he did not campaign. It seems a reasonable assumption, then, that Philip may have needed the time to recover from the broken bones that left him lame and with a deformed leg. Demosthenes may not have been far off the mark when he said of Philip that, quote, he was ready to sacrifice to the future of war every part of his body, if only the life of the shattered remnants should be a life of honour and renown. The next section that I'd be reading is about women, wives, and politics. And I believe in this time period, women were very much not a significant force, let's say, within politics, at least even from the background. They did eventually become that, particularly with Olympias, I suppose, being the premier example, Alexander's mother. But later, many of the other queens of the various successor kingdoms take similar kind of steps, especially in the I believe I believe in the Persian kingdoms they had a bit more leeway as well, or I might be wrong on that. I might be thinking of the successor kingdoms. But I think there is where I will leave the book. We got about 14, 15 pages in, so a nice dent, and it is quite a long book, I will say. Let me take a quick scan to see if there's any notes that I can quickly go through. Uh, it is very unlikely that the arrow was protruding from Philip's eye when he reached the aid station. To do so, an arrow of some 28 inches in length would have to have penetrate Philip's eye socket to a depth of at least 4 inches to sustain the weight of the arrow's shaft extending outside the eye socket. Such a wound would have penetrated the brain and killed Philip. More likely, the wound may have been caused by a glancing blow that could have sliced the eye and the surrounding skin without striking any of the bone of the eye socket itself. In these circumstances, the skull would have revealed no injury to the surrounding bones upon autopsy. Okay. Yeah, so there's the rest of the notes are just kind of like references and sources. Ugh. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea in a little while. Uh, I have to be up early for stuff tomorrow. I'm also going to get my hair cut tomorrow, so that'll be good. But will I end stream now? Do I feel like doing some more stuff? I'm not entirely sure. I might just chill out for a while. How have you guys been? It's the weekend now. I hope you've been well, Haru. Uh, and Last Lot as well. You guys joined. I don't know if you guys have just been lurking for a while, but I hope everyone enjoyed the reading, and I hope it was relaxing. I do. Excuse me. I do sometimes feel like I forget that I'm doing like an ASMR style reading, and my voice might get a little bit loud, and then I'm going. Oh no! I hope the people. I hope they're not getting angry at that. I hope they don't like that. Oh yeah, I joined at the start, then just lurked for like an hour and a half playing Titanfall. Nice, nice. I never got to play Titanfall, but I always enjoyed watching it for the crazy movement. I know a lot of games these days, or at least like kind of the first person shooters, they have like wacky movement. I recently saw a couple of Twitter videos of like people playing the new Call of Duty, and they're just like, or Call of Duty, as I should say it. Why did I call it duty? Duty just sounds like a another word for poo. uh, but Call of Duty has like such weird movement nowadays, where it just looks it feels like Zoomers just have no attention span, and they have to be doing stupid movement tech. They can't just run around. They can't just hold down one button and run, and maybe hold down like a circle button to crouch or to dive. It has to be like they're flicking all the time, and they're pressing jump every second to make sure that they maintain optimum speed. While yeah, the movement in Titanfall then is like designed for that type of stuff. I believe Apex apparently has very good movement as well, from what I've seen. But I think Titanfall is like the 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 height of that like really slick movement. I wonder, did Titanfall ever bring out like a battle royale game? I feel like they could have done well with that, especially with their movement. I suppose Apex probably already caters to that though. Yeah, Apex pretty much took that spot. I think I might play a little bit of CK3 or something. Apex Legends is in the Titanfall universe. I did not wait. Is that who made? Is that the guys who made? I did not know that. I just never. I never really looked into developers. I just knew the game. Yeah, same people. That makes so much more sense. That makes way more sense. So they did make it. They knew they had a good idea. I remember before I watched this fantastic video essay by Soviet Womble about the origin of battle royale, extending all the way back to DayZ, and well, at least one origin, but a major aspect of it. And it's a really well made story. And some people don't like the jokey parts and in like video essays and stuff, but like those people are losers. They want things to be serious and to always be presenting information. Like, no, fuck you. I wanna hear Soviet Womble talk about finches and set up a silly little evolution uh similarity to development of games, or at least the development of games within like a community of mods and stuff, with no developer imposing things from top. Oh god. The first like week or two back in the gym is always a little tough. But I think I might uh look for someone nice to raid. Yeah, I'm gonna go raid Doug Doug. I'm gonna go raid Doug Doug. That makes so much more sense. Titanfall 2 or Armored Core 6. I have not played either of those games. Who's around right now that I can raid into? I suppose I should aim to raid into someone who's doing ASMR, shouldn't I? Because I'm doing ASMR. That's kind of typically how I think you should do something. Like if you're do, I think it's fine to raid into any other thing, but if you're doing a boss is or the bosses, I don't know. I don't know what the bosses are like. Let me see who's on ASMR. Excuse me. I'm a little sniffly. Uh, I'm so glad you guys can't see my screen because there's a lot of weird things. Because that's just the ASMR front page. Okay, I there's things I see. There's things I see on the front page, and I'm just like, how is that allowed? How can that be okay to have on Twitch? That can't be okay. That's literally like at a certain point Twitch just becomes it's not no, it's not just women. It's not just women. Like women aren't that weird clever that I will be like women should be on Twitch. Ew, women, get out of my ASMR content, my VTuber content. Even though VTubing is actually probably like one of the few like areas of streaming of general content creation that women tend to be much more popular than the males. It's an interesting way. Ruo with a femboy. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what ASMR should only be. Exactly. But no. What I'm talking about is like there's people like where the entire focus is it's not ASMR. It's just sex. It's basically just cam site, cam work. It's like, oh, I'm not showing like anything specific, so it's okay. It's like no, like it's just I I kind of wish that Twitch would just open up like a not safe for work version of their website, and then everyone can go there, and then it's like, okay, here is where like the good side of things can stick. And of course, like there's a balance with that. Some people like wearing slightly revealing clothing, and that's fine. That's fine. But like when it's you can tell when a stream is specifically focused on being like there's a certain level to it. A woman who has a lot of cleavage, who's showing a lot of cleavage, and she's just sitting there and doing a stream. Okay, she probably is using that fact to generate viewers, but fair enough, fair enough. I mean, as long as you're still doing normal stream stuff. A woman who has two cameras pointed at her ass and zoomed up close, and they're specifically to give two different angles. Like, no, that should be on a cam website. It's very annoying. I apologize. I just had to rant a little bit there. Ooh, they have a really lovely. Okay, I found a really cute looking VTuber model. She has a lovely cardigan. Uh, I think she's some kind of. Oh, she's a fox. I like foxes. Foxes are really nice. She's a foxy shroom witch. So we're gonna raid her, and we're gonna be we're just gonna go like Rua. Hang on, set it up. Let's do this. Rua raid. Of course, that's if you guys can do that. If not, if you don't have access to stream or to emotes, uh, feel free to just go Rua raid or something and be nice as always. She's doing like humming. Oh, that's so good. Humming is really, really good. Okay, we're gonna raid in. I'm probably gonna listen to her later and fall asleep. Shroom. Oh, That's nice. Okay, I'm gonna go. Thank you all for joining me. It's been lovely to chat to you guys as always. Gareb Mila Magut and Slán Gafoil. Oh wait, hang on. I have to click the start raid and wait a little bit. Oopsie. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Bye bye, guys. Bye bye. Gareb Mila Magut, Slán Gafoil. See you guys soon.